US President Joe Biden denounced former President Donald Trump for encouraging Russia to attack NATO allies. In his sharpest comments yet, the president called his Republican opponent dumb, shameful, dangerous, and un-American. In a televised statement, Biden said that a $95 billion spending package, which the Senate had passed on Tuesday in a bipartisan vote, was imperative to help defeat the vicious onslaught of Vladimir Putin. On Crux Decode, why the path ahead for this defense spending bill is much harder in the US House of Representatives, which is controlled by Republicans who are beholden to Trump, and why these Republicans are linking the passage of this defense bill to Ukraine, Israel, and other US allies in the Asia-Pacific to tougher anti-immigration measures at the southern border with Mexico.
Can you imagine a former president of the United States saying that? The whole world heard it. The worst thing is he means it. No other president in our history has ever bowed down to a Russian dictator. Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I never will. For God's sake, it's dumb, it's shameful, it's dangerous, it's un-American.
Donald Trump has long expressed admiration for Putin and derision for NATO and Ukraine. Over the weekend, at a campaign rally in South Carolina, he boasted that he had warned NATO allies who did not spend enough on their own militaries that he would not come to their defense if Russia attacked them. What the implication of what Trump's statement meant was this, that effectively, Article 5 of the NATO Charter would be rendered toothless. Article 5 says an attack on one is an attack on all. It's been a cornerstone for peace in Europe for the last 75 years since the end of World War II. But that has now changed. Not only would Trump not help European allies if they were to be attacked by Russia, he also said that he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want.
So I said, you didn't pay, you're delinquent. He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. And the money came flowing in.
The Senate finally passed the $95 billion security aid package early Tuesday morning. It was 70 in favor to 29 against. Nearly 24 Republicans joined all the Democrats in supporting the financing bill. The package includes $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, $9 billion for humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, Ukraine, as well as other conflict zones. It also has a provision for $4.8 billion for Taiwan, as well as other Indo-Pacific allies who are concerned about an aggressive China. The measure would also provide an additional $60.1 billion for Kiev, and that would mean that the total US investment in the Ukraine war effort so far has been more than $170 billion. That is far, far more than what Europe has coughed up since the start of this war nearly 2 years ago. 22 Senate Republicans voted with the Democrats for the passage of this bill. The rest of the Republican Party has been arguing against continuing funding a foreign nation's battle to protect its own sovereignty, in this case Ukraine, without first cracking down on an influx of immigration into the United States from its southern border with Mexico. Speaker Mike Johnson, however, has vowed not to allow a vote on the House floor without including some of these hardline provisions to crack down on illegal immigration. Johnson, who's under pressure from Trump, does not want to give Biden a political win ahead of the November election. The Speaker has already rejected a bipartisan border compromise deal that was negotiated by a conservative senator, along with Democrat and independent counterparts. The likelihood of any agreement on an even tougher anti-immigration package that would be acceptable to both Trump and Biden is almost impossible. And even if it does, there is no guarantee that it will pass on the House floor. Republican hostility to the measure has been egged on by former President Donald Trump, who encouraged GOP senators to reject an earlier version of this bill that would have included a bipartisan border security deal. As a result of that, the aid to Ukraine and even the aid to Israel remained hostage to a domestic political dispute. Military aid that was previously approved for Ukraine has run out. Ukraine is desperately seeking to expel Russian invaders from its eastern territories. And it's not just Ukraine, even Israel needs replenishment after 4 months of military operations in response to the October 7th Hamas terror attack. Speaker Johnson last week tried to pass a bill providing just Israel with the money required, but that bill fell short of the 2/3 majority that was required for it to pass. Biden also threatened to veto that bill. He rejected separating the aid for Ukraine from the rest of the countries in this defense spending bill. Republicans are more open to backing funding for Israel, but not necessarily for Ukraine. Democrats can try and bypass Speaker Johnson and move the security package directly to the floor of the House if they can rally enough Republicans to come up with 218 signatures. The Democrats currently have the support of 210. But it is a cumbersome uphill process. It takes a lot of time, and the worst part is it almost always, very rarely, works. The task is going to be even more difficult in the Republican-led House, where Speaker Johnson, of course, controls the floor. But more than that, right-wing lawmakers have shown almost a militant willingness not to even allow legislation that they're opposed to from even coming up for a vote on the House floor. Biden dared Johnson to allow a floor vote. He's arguing that there is a clear majority in the House for this spending bill. Biden is throwing the gauntlet at the Speaker despite his opposition and also the opposition of the hardline Freedom Caucus. Biden added that Republicans who stood in the way would ultimately be held accountable. He repeated his recent favorite line that history is watching. He framed the issue as a choice between freedom and autocracy. Not something that Donald Trump particularly cares too much about, because he's seen very much as an elected autocrat anyway.
Supporting this bill is standing up to Putin. Opposing it is playing into Putin's hands. As I've said before, the stakes in this fight extend far beyond Ukraine. If we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine. And the cost for America and our allies and partners are going to rise. For Republicans in Congress who think they can oppose funding for Ukraine and not be held accountable, history is watching. History is watching. History is watching. Failure to support Ukraine at this critical moment will never be forgotten.
Ultimately, it boils down to politics. Republicans feel that immigration will be the most potent issue in the election against Joe Biden and the Democrats come this fall. They want to milk the issue of illegal immigration for as long as they can. They also believe that this is the one issue that will be their response in a way to blunt the other more emotional issue which has been roiling the campaign, and that is abortion rights for women. That is a touchy topic for Republicans. Immigration is an issue they feel they can really pin Biden down on. Biden's response to illegal immigration has oscillated from weak-kneed to fire and brimstone. But ultimately, net-net, the result is this, that he's not been able to muster a coherent political response to the problem of illegal immigration. In the process, one of America's closest allies, a country that is fighting for its very survival, has become collateral damage.